Right, hello everybody. I have just come from a final seminar from my colleague Björn Ekström, which was very interesting, but my brain is now tired. So, hi. Right, so my name is Elisa Tattersall Wallin, and I am a senior lecturer at the Swedish School of Library and Information Science. And I'm here to talk to you guys about a small research project where some colleagues and I have studied online information about wind power in Sweden. And can you see this presentation okay? Good. Okay, so I have included 3 images here, which on this slide, which represent different aspects of our study and our findings, I would say. I generated these using DALL-E from OpenAI, and I just wanted to see what visualizations would I get with 3 different prompts about sort of fighting windmills and just about windmills in an open landscape and windmills in social media. And here you can see what I got. Right, so this project was an exploratory quantitative study of how information about wind power circulated online in Sweden between May and November of 2022, so last year. We do have some data starting January 2022 as well, but majority of data collection was done May to November. So the focus of this study was on larger trends, types of claims, and dominant relations concerning wind power on social media, and especially Twitter, because it was still possible to do research on Twitter last year, and to a lesser extent also YouTube and Facebook, and the role that search engines have, and specifically Google search, in these constellations. And the study explored the circulation of both information supported by research and information that is not necessarily backed up by research-based evidence. So we've predominantly used quantitative digital methods in this project, and I should note that all data was completely anonymous and aggregated at a high level. And most of us, not all, but most of us are researchers within information science, so that's where our area of expertise lies. So we're used to studying social media, search engines, platforms, and the use and spread of information. And so we got funding from Mistra a year ago, and we started collecting data in June 2022, as I just said. And the project has now actually been sort of wrapped up because we finished the majority of the work earlier this year. Besides myself, the team members are Jutta Heide, who is a professor here at SSLIS, and she's also the project leader. And then Björn Ekström, whose seminar I've just come from, and Malte Rödl at SLU, and initially Nora Söderberg, who was also part of the project, but she left SLU to begin her PhD last autumn. We also had invaluable help from our colleague, David Gunnarsson Lorentzen, who is an expert on Twitter research and advised on this part and helped with some of the programming for that. So we have 2 written outputs. We have a project report, which we published earlier this year, summarizing all of our findings. And then Björn Ekström and I have also written a journal article where we focused solely on Google search data on wind power. And this article is currently under review with an information studies journal. And so this presentation will cover a few things from our project report specifically. I say a few things because we had a lot of data. But firstly, we have some Google search queries and Google search results. And we could see that the URLs that appear most frequently on search result pages when searching for wind power and related terms are from public authorities, interests and advocacy organizations, and energy companies. And the number of searches for the term vindkraft rose sharply in the period leading up to the 2022 Swedish elections. The related search that saw the strongest increase in September 22 was nackdelar med vindkraft, so disadvantages with wind power. And the top 10 average monthly search queries related to 4 types of queries. So building your own wind turbine efficiency, wind turbine operation, and offshore wind power. And the query wind turbine at home, or vindkraftverk hemma, has the highest number of average monthly searches. And the visualization that I've included here, this figure shows the monthly average search terms and auto-suggest terms and Google search queries related to wind power. And the largest pink circle is for this query, vindkraftverk hemma. So it is proportionally the largest query and shows some of the interests that the Swedish population have in wind power when they search for information on Google. We also explored how news about wind power was shared across Facebook groups. Here is part of a table from the report, which showed the 10 most interacted with news articles and press releases in Facebook groups. So any Facebook groups that have shared news. Due to the size of this table, I can only actually show you the top 6 articles, but if you're interested, you can always peruse the rest in the report. But we see a larger amount of interactions. So that's comments and shares for articles about a wind turbine which broke down, and also op-eds against wind power. And there also are some comparisons between wind power and nuclear power in some of these news texts, often portraying nuclear power in a more sort of positive light. I have this network graph which visualizes how the news media is interacted with in these Facebook groups. So we have 4 different colors here. I'm going to explain what they mean. So the gray nodes represent the actual Facebook groups themselves. The red nodes represent news media content with unfavorable portrayals of wind power. Blue nodes represent news media content that talks about wind power in more general terms. And then the green nodes are news media content with favorable portrayals of wind power. And the size of these nodes represents the number of relationships, and the centrality implies link interrelation. So the main cluster in the middle, in the center, shows that several Facebook groups primarily tend to interact with news media portraying wind power in a more unfavorable light, which is why we see this rather large red cluster in the middle. So predominantly, more unfavorable news are shared on Facebook, and then we occasionally can see more favorable outliers, and the general sort of news media are also outliers. We also collected Twitter data, as I mentioned, and to provide an overview of the Twitter data set, we created this word cloud to show the most frequently occurring words in the collected tweets. We've excluded stop words, so prepositions, common verbs, etc. here. So vindkraft is, of course, the largest word, the most common term in the cloud, and the second largest is kärnkraft, so nuclear power. And then we have Sverige, Sweden, havsbaserad vindkraft, so offshore wind power, electricity, building, and blows, so when the wind blows. Zooming in further, I don't know if you can see it on this small image here, but we can also see certain user handles. Now we've made all of this anonymous, so we have sort of user _56, for instance. So we don't know who that is, but we can understand that certain specific users were prominent and possibly dominant in discussions about wind power on Twitter at the time. And there are also several political parties mentioned in this data set, which is reflected in this word cloud. And this is the final graph I'm going to show you. We collected 2 Twitter data sets, and this is from the second Twitter data set, which was created from searches using the hashtag SVPoll, so that's Swedish politics discussions. And this was collected between January 1st, 2022 and September 11th, 2022, which was the day of the general elections. And so with the use of this data set, we explored the context of the vindkraft hashtag in relation then to the SVPoll hashtag, so in political discussions during this time span. And the use of this hashtag, vindkraft, increased on Twitter in the lead up to the 2022 general elections. This particular network graph shows a co-hashtag analysis of the part of the SVPoll hashtag wherein the vindkraft hashtag occurred during August of 2022, so the month before the election. And it occurs together with hashtags related to energy production, fuel prices, and transport. So that shows sort of the context of where this is discussed. But it is a smaller hashtag compared to many other topics. And this is also something we found, that hashtags aren't used at all to the same extent when people discuss wind power as they do in other cases, which we found interesting. So to sum up, we can see that there are generally more favorable search terms used in Google searches, with people showing interest in, for instance, installing small wind turbines at home. And this is then in contrast to the type of content shared in Facebook groups, where we see more news depicting wind power in a negative or unfavorable light, which is shared to a much higher degree. And on Twitter, we see that wind power is often compared to nuclear power. But these are just small snippets of our findings, and there's so much I haven't covered, including our YouTube data. So if you're interested, I've included the link for a report for you to read more. Thank you for listening.